Cypher is the new trade that is by default high risk, high reward. It has the most 8th place rate, but at the same time, it has a very high first place rate. However, most pro players would say that this is low risk and high reward at the moment. I also do believe Cypher is way too strong right now and will be nerfed in the near future. But until that happens, let me explain to you exactly how you can optimize the benefits while reducing the risks with multiple strategies. Unless you have the augment hostile takeover that forces you to play Cypher differently, you need to lose a lot of fights in a row to gather more intel and expect a bigger cash out. In fact, you have 3 ways to gather more intel. One is by killing units, which usually isn't the best way to farm the intel. The other 2 ways are by losing fights. You have a fixed amount of intel that is relative to the stage you're playing, and also you get bonus based on the length of your current loss streak. The goal is to gather as much intel as possible until you reach the stages 3-3, 3-7, 4-3, 4-7 or 5-3, when you will be offered to give all the intel you gathered for the price shown. TLDR, the strategy is to lose on purpose while saving as much health as possible so you can aim for a bigger cash out at stage 4-3 or even stage 4-7 if you have an augment or hacked orb that give you more health. I recommend aiming for a cash out at stage 4-3 with a little trick that I will explain a little bit later at the video. But if that is way too risky because your health is already too low, don't hesitate to accept a cash out at stage 3-7, otherwise you might just end up 8th. If you maintain a proper loss streak until these stages, you would usually end up with a good risk to reward ratio. For instance, the 450 intel will give you everything you need to build a good board or get resources to look for late game win conditions. But for some reason, the cash out at 290 is also very good and something that you should aim for, especially at stage 3-7, because this is enough to make you come back. Alright, let's start with the first strategy. If you want to play Cypher, I recommend these strategies for beginners or people who are not really confident with loss streaking and playing Cypher, simply because this comp requires less transition and is more straightforward. So basically, like I said earlier, you will lose the early game, you will have a loss streak, and you will start to gather the perfect augment possible for this comp around Z and Zeri. So you will also try to gather the good components and you will stuff Z with IE, Hand of Justice and Edge of Night. Of course, if you have an artifact from the Cypher, you might want to look for stuff like Trenchcoat plus Edge of Night, but you will also want to have other stuff like Prowler's Claw or something like this. Anyway, for Zeri, it's going to be very straightforward. You want Ginzu Gunblade. She scales very hard with attack speed. And at the end, you will also keep your 3 Cypher, giving a little bit more bonus stats to the Z. And you will play 4 Bastion thanks to Galio, thanks to Tejuani, one of the best for-cost tank, and Renekton, who is also going to be a great late-game carry. When you play this comp, you really want to try to push level 8 and roll down around stage 4-1 or 4-2, since you're going to lose a lot of health because of Cypher. You want to make sure like you have a very strong stage 4 from the first round, right? Otherwise, if you start to lose too much fights during stage 4, it's probably going to be an 8th, but this is the best strategy if you don't want to pivot out too much of Cypher. Alright, now if you want to play another strategy, which is a little bit more advanced, and I recommend this for players who already know a little bit how to play around Cypher, how to play around loose streaking and stuff like that, is simply to pick whatever S tier comp in the meta. So at the moment I'm making the video, I was about to say that the best comp, for instance, would be to play Annie Samira AMP, but it gets heavily nerfed with the B patch, so I'm not going to take this example anymore, but I think you kind of understand what I mean. You can play, for instance, Ziggs plus Brand as a strategist for late game comp, and you just simply use the Cypher as extra resources to help you get that comp. So you will have a full pivot from Cypher. You will remove all the Cypher units because they are not relevant in this Ziggs Brand strategist comp, for instance, and you will just play the comp normally. It's just that instead of having average resources, you just have more resources thanks to Cypher. So really don't hesitate for this strategy, which is a little bit more advanced, to completely ignore Cypher once you cash out in order to have just more resources and aim for a comp that is S tier, because you simply have more resources than your opponent, so you're more likely to find these units and just make one of the biggest comeback in the lobby. Now there's a third strategy. Usually this is the strategy you don't like to use because it often means that you didn't manage to have your perfect loss streak. This will happen. Unfortunately, there are times where there will be two players playing Cypher at the same time and you didn't manage to int your board enough so you got a win and you didn't manage to have a perfect loss streak. If that's the case, I would say do not panic. You have multiple ways to still save your game and avoid big loss, a big 8th place for instance. What you first need to understand is like how much you lost in that loss streak. Like if it's, I don't know, at 2-1 or 2-2 is not that important, but if it's like at 3-1, it starts to be a little bit problematic because it's a little bit too expensive in terms of health in order to make another good loss streak and try to cash out a big reward later. So if that's the case, if that happened to you, like I said a little bit earlier in the video, one of the things you can try to aim is the 290 cash out, which is really good for the risk to reward ratio. I don't know why this one is so good compared to others, but it's just good. So you can try to aim for that. Also, another thing that you might want to try is to maybe cash out a 3-7 if you think that you can reach 290. If you think that it's not possible, another solution again is to cash out a 3-3 and get out of Cypher as fast as possible. Just get a little bit more resources, a little bit of gold, a little bit of components, nothing more than that. It's already good. You don't necessarily need to force it too much, otherwise you just end up 8th. And usually for this kind of strategy, what's working very well is to pivot out into a reroll comp. I wanted to suggest you to play, for instance, LeBlanc reroll with Strategist and Echo as well as your frontline, which is on the paper very nice, but I also know that at the moment I'm recording this video, that comp is not that great. But maybe, I don't know, in 1 month, if you're watching this video 1 month after I released it, you might see that LeBlanc has been buffed or Echo has been buffed and this comp is suddenly much stronger. So whenever you have bad loss streak with Cypher, don't hesitate to try to pivot into reroll comp. Another comp I have in mind, which also requires a full pivot, is to play Vayne reroll, right? It's a comp, you can have a Cypher, you cash out at 33 with a little bit more gold or components, then you remove your Cypher, you play a Vayne because you already bought some Vayne and you have a good Vanguard base, and you just play that. That's possible. I'm not saying that you can do that all the time because you need to find Vayne in order to do that, but I'm just giving this example to give you a little bit more creativity in your way of playing Cypher. Alright, before I end this video, I wanted to share with you some tips. I think these tips are really important. So first of all, the first tip is try to force Cypher a little bit more. Even if you don't have a perfect Cypher start, you can force it if, for instance, during stage 1, you have a hacked orb that gives you health, because since you have more health, you are technically more able to take on losses. But that works also with augments. And I'm talking about these augments, which are godlike to play Cypher. We have Titanic Titan, Tiniest Titan, Calculated Loss, and also, which is going to be nice, but later, Final Reserve and Last Stand. These are extremely powerful augments that you can pick later in the game. You don't have them at 2-1, of course. Then the second tip I want to give you is, again, if you don't start with Cypher at 2-1, but you have a loss streak and later you put Cypher, as long as you have your loss streak, your bonus intel that you get from the loss streak will be calculated properly. So it means that it's fine if you put, I don't know, Cypher at stage 2-3, 2-4, because if you lost the stages previously, you don't start from 0 and you will still stack fairly fast, right? The third tip I wanted to share with you is also, this one is for survivability, and it's a little bit of micromanagement that you need to do, but that can save you from a very tough spot and you can come back from that. So if you start to be really short in health, which can happen because you're approaching stage 4, you didn't have any ones that gives you health and you took a lot of nasty losses. So what you can do is, like at stage 3-5 or 4-1, you can remove your Cypher units and you can try to make a stronger board, right? You put a strong board, you slam your items, and you just make sure that either you lose or you win the fight. So you can save as much health as possible. And then the stage after, so 3-6 or 4-2, you put back Cypher. At stage 3-7 or at stage 4-3, you will be able to to cash Cyper. And of course, the cash won't be as big as if you lost all the fights before, but at least you save some health, which allows you to stay alive and be able to cash out. Because otherwise, if you don't do that, there are some games where you just die without being able to reach stage 4-3 and cash out. So don't forget to do some micromanagement like that towards the end of the stages when you're close to cash out the Cyper, to just remove the units, put back a good board, win or lose with a good amount of health saved, and then after put it back just to cash out. All right, that's it for Cyper. I think this is one of the most fun comp and traits of the set. I think most people will have fun with it. It's all about being able to manage your loss streak properly and the amount of intel you get. I gave you 3 strategies to help you. One which is more for beginners and starters who don't like to go out a full comp and have to do a lot of stuff in one turn. The second is more like for advanced players, especially that for top meta comps. If you're curious about what are the best meta comps, you can simply check my spreadsheet. It's a cheat sheet I make and I update every single day just to make sure I give you the best comps of the meta if you want to climb. So the link will be in the description, and also some tips there and there just to make you help optimize everything so you have better chances of winning with Cyper. I hope this video was useful and I'll see you at the top of the ladder.